The Rise and Fall of David Bowie. Get ready to rock out with the rise and fall of the legendary David Bowie. Follow the story of the iconic musician, from his humble beginnings to his journey to superstardom. We'll cover all the highs and lows of his career and how he changed the music world forever. So buckle up and let's explore the life of the one and only David Bowie. David Bowie, born David Robert Jones, was a British singer, songwriter, and actor who was known for his innovative and constantly evolving musical style and stage presence. He was born on January 8, 1947 in Brixton, London, to Margaret Mary Burns, who was from Kent and worked as a waitress, and Haywood Stanton Jones, who was from Doncaster and worked for the children's charity Barnardo's. The family lived in Lambeth, South London, and Bowie attended school in the area. From a young age, Bowie showed an interest in music and was particularly inspired by Elvis Presley and Little Richard. He played the piano, ukulele, and tea-chest bass, and enjoyed performing. In fact, his dancing skills were so vividly artistic that his teachers described him as mesmerizing, like someone from another planet. In the late 1950s, his father introduced him to musicians and other performers, including Alma Cogan and Tommy Steele. After finishing junior school, Bowie attended Bromley Technical High School, where he studied design and languages. He was also heavily influenced by his half-brother, Terry Burns, who was 10 years older than him and had schizophrenia. Burns introduced Bowie to jazz, Buddhism, beat poetry, and the occult. In 1962, a young David Bowie found himself at the center of a fight over a girl with his friend George Underwood. And what's a fight without a few scratches? Unfortunately, things got a little too real, and Underwood punched Bowie in the left eye, causing some serious damage. After spending 4 months in the hospital and undergoing multiple surgeries, Bowie's doctors determined that the damage couldn't be fully repaired. As a result, he was left with faulty depth perception and anisocoria, a condition that gave the appearance of a change in the color of his iris. But hey, at least it gave him one of his most iconic features. Despite the altercation, Bowie and Underwood remained good friends, with Underwood even creating the artwork for some of Bowie's early albums. Talk about making up and moving on. In 1962, a young David Bowie formed his first band, the Conrads. Despite their impressive name, they were just a group of kids playing guitar-based rock and roll at local youth gatherings and weddings. But Bowie wasn't content to play at small-time events forever. He wanted to be a pop star, and he let his parents know it. In fact, he was so determined to make it big that he even wrote a letter to a successful washing machine entrepreneur, John Bloom, asking him to do for us what Brian Epstein has done for the Beatles and make another million. Unfortunately for Bowie, Bloom didn't respond to the letter, but it did lead to his first personal management contract with Dick James's partner, Leslie Kahn. Kahn wasted no time in trying to promote Bowie and his band, the King Bees. They released their debut single, Lisa Jane, but it wasn't exactly a hit. In fact, it was a complete flop. But Bowie didn't let this disappointment get him down. He quickly moved on to join another blues group, the Manish Boys, where he hoped to be their Mick Jagger. Unfortunately, their cover of Bobby Bland's I Pity the Fool was just as unsuccessful as Lisa Jane, and Bowie found himself on the move again, this time to join the Lower Third. The Lower Third was a blues trio heavily influenced by The Who, and Bowie was excited to be a part of it. However, their single, You've Got a Habit of Leaving, also failed to make an impact. Frustrated and disheartened, Bowie announced that he was going to quit the music industry and study mime at Sadler's Wells. But despite this declaration, he stayed with the Lower Third and signed a contract with Pi Records. Under the guidance of his new manager, Ralph Horton, Bowie released 3 more singles: Can't Help Thinking About You, Do Anything You Say, and I Dig Everything. But none of them were successful. At this point, Bowie realized that he needed a fresh start, and he decided to change his stage name from Davy Jones to David Bowie. He wanted a name that would stand out and be memorable, and he found inspiration in the 19th century American pioneer, James Bowie, and the knife he had popularized. With his new name and a renewed sense of determination, Bowie signed with Dream Records and released his debut album, David Bowie. Unfortunately, the album was a flop, just like his previous releases. But Bowie didn't give up. In 1968, he released the single Space Oddity, which became a hit and marked the beginning of a successful solo career. During this time, Bowie experimented with different looks and styles, and even dabbled in cross-dressing. He was also interested in Buddhism and was rumored to be able to levitate during his meditation sessions. Despite these strange fascinations, music remained the main focus of Bowie's life. In 1969, he finally achieved some success with the release of his single Space Oddity, which became a hit in the UK. However, this success was short-lived, as Bowie's subsequent albums failed to sell well. In fact, it seemed that no matter what he did, Bowie just couldn't catch a break. He married model Angie Barnett in 1970, but their open relationship quickly turned toxic, with Bowie later claiming that living with Angie was like living with a blowtorch. To make matters worse, his father died, and his half-brother was institutionalized due to mental illness. Despite of all these setbacks, Bowie persevered and continued to work on his music. In 1971, he came up with a plan to create a full-sensory concert experience and develop the character of a pansexual alien rock star based on former rocker Vince Taylor. This character, known as Ziggy Stardust, became the focus of Bowie's next album. He'd spent months refining his new character, Ziggy Stardust, and convincing the rest of the band to embrace their glitzy, otherworldly image. There were times when it seemed like they would never get there, like when guitarist Mick Ronson flat out refused to wear the sparkly gold outfit Bowie had designed for them, telling him to F off and insisting that he would rather wear a paper bag. But somehow, Bowie managed to win them over, and soon the band was practicing their dance moves, working on their stage presence, and generally doing everything they could to become the ultimate glam rock act. If you have been enjoying this video, our YouTube data shows 0.1% of our viewers aren't subscribed, and it looks like that's you. So do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications so you never miss another video. Finally, the moment of truth arrived on January 29, 1972. The Ziggy Stardust phenomenon finally came together on stage, as Bowie and the Spiders put on a show that would go down in history. Bowie was at his most alluring, seductively dancing with male band members, seductively licking Mick Ronson's guitar, and generally exuding otherworldly, erotic energy that was almost too much to handle. Even Freddie Mercury, who was just a couple of years away from stardom himself, was in attendance, and he was reportedly blown away by what he saw. David Bowie's album Young Americans was a pivotal moment in his career, as it helped him finally break into the US market and solidify his place as a major player in the music industry. This album, which featured a mix of plastic soul and funk, was just the beginning of Bowie's experimentation with different genres and sounds. He took things even further with his next album, Station to Station, which blended elements of funk, rock, and electronic music in a way that was truly unique and groundbreaking. Behind the scenes, Bowie was working hard to attract press attention in any way he could. He famously came out as gay in an interview with Melody Maker, which helped him gain a whole new fan base. He was also taking the band to the ballet, telling them to observe the way lighting was used as an integral part of the performance, and generally doing everything he could to raise their game. But while Bowie was enjoying success in his career, he was also struggling with addiction, particularly to cocaine. His drug abuse reached such intense levels that he lost touch with reality, surviving on a diet of milk and raw peppers and experiencing periodic overdoses. He became paranoid and began storing his nail clippings in the fridge for fear that witches would steal them. Bowie's addiction was made even more dangerous by the fact that it ran in his family, and he eventually reached a point where he realized he needed to make a change or risk losing everything. In addition to his drug abuse, Bowie was also interested in exploring darker themes and subjects. He became fascinated with Nietzsche and delved into the world of dark magic and fascism, even going so far as to collect Nazi memorabilia. He used these interests to fuel the creation of his next alter ego, the Thin White Duke, a far-right aristocrat who sang passionate love songs but felt nothing. This character, like Ziggy Stardust before him, blurred the line between Bowie and the persona he was portraying, and it ultimately led to controversy when Bowie made public statements expressing his belief in fascism and the idea that Britain could benefit from a fascist leader. As the 1970s came to a close, Bowie found himself at a crossroads. His marriage was falling apart, he was struggling with addiction, and he had become isolated and disconnected from the world around him. Something needed to change if he wanted to survive, and so he made the decision to leave Los Angeles and move to Berlin, a city that had always fascinated him. The Berlin of the 1970s was a strange and divided place, with the city itself split into two by the Berlin Wall. It was in this environment that Bowie began to turn his life around, getting clean and finding inspiration for a new album that would become one of his most acclaimed works, Low. The difficult relationship with his wife, Angie, which he later described as living with a blowtorch, and the ongoing fear that he might develop the same mental illness that had affected his father and half-brother. But somehow, he managed to turn all of that into fuel for his music, using his pain and his struggles to create some of the most iconic and enduring songs of the 1970s. And in the end, that's what really made him a star. His ability to take everything that life threw at him and turn it into something beautiful and enduring. In 1977, David Bowie released Low, an album that was hailed as a masterpiece by critics and fans alike. However, the general public didn't seem to agree, and sales were somewhat underwhelming. But Bowie wasn't one to let a little thing like poor sales get him down, and he quickly got to work on his next album. Just 10 months later, he released Heroes, a collection of dark, ambient songs and more commercial tracks, including the iconic title track. The record company wasn't exactly thrilled with the album, thinking it was more of a dark, drab mess than a masterpiece. They begged Bowie to change it and make it more like Young Americans, but he was having none of it. He insisted that this was his going clean album, and he wanted it to stay intact. And thank goodness he did, because Heroes ended up being a critical and commercial smash, propelling him back to the top of the music industry. It was a triumphant moment for Bowie, a sign that he could thrive without the help of drugs and be just as successful as ever. But Heroes wasn't the end of Bowie's commercial success. In the 1980s, he became a global megastar on par with the likes of Prince and Michael Jackson, playing to sold-out arenas and releasing hit after hit. The pinnacle of this era was probably the release of Let's Dance and the accompanying Serious Moonlight Tour, which made him millions of dollars and provided manga artist Iri Karaki with inspiration for his infamous villain. Even in the decades that followed, Bowie continued to release successful albums and remain a prominent figure in the music industry. But let's be real, nothing will ever top the glory of Heroes. It's simply one of pop music's greatest masterpieces, and it's a testament to the enduring talent and creativity of David Bowie. David Bowie was a musical innovator who consistently pushed the boundaries of what was possible in the world of rock and roll. From his early days as a folk singer to his later experiments with electronic and pop music, he was always one step ahead of the curve. His rise to fame was meteoric, and he quickly became one of the most beloved and respected musicians of his generation. However, his success was not without its challenges. Bowie struggled with addiction and mental health issues, and he faced controversy and criticism for his exploration of dark themes and his flirtation with fascism. But through it all, he remained a creative force to be reckoned with, and his influence on the music industry is undeniable. If you enjoyed this video, then definitely check out this video right here.